And I've written 3 of the 5 volumes of a Torah commentary called the Rational Bible, including Exodus, which interestingly was the first one that I did, given that it has my favorite document in history, the 10 Commandments. And as I say on my American talk show, if you want to defund the police, there is actually a way. Have everyone live by the 10 Commandments. Then you can defund the police. So that is where I come from in this discussion. And I trust you will all defer appropriately to a member of the chosen people.
Happy to.
I want to pick up on what you said, Dennis, a little before, and I want to propose that there might be a very important narrative reason why the midwives are Hebrew in this case. And the reason, I think it's a good lesson for us today, which is that the tyrant is empowering women to kill their men. That is what the tyrant is doing. Mm-hmm. And he's doing it in order to feminize the Hebrews. And I think that
no wonder you get in trouble all the time.
But I think
my mentor Peter Berger has a notion: signals of transcendence. Mm-hmm. Some are positive, beauty, or C.S. Lewis surprised by joy. Mm-hmm. Some are negative, like the Auden one. This, to me, is the ultimate signal of transcendence ever. Because if you look at burning, mm-hmm. it must end in ashes.
Mm-hmm. And you can't look away from fire either. Like we
Nothing
are the
lasts.
apes who couldn't
Everything
look away
changes.
from fire.
You can't step in the same river twice. Mm-hmm. If you just go that way, you'd end up with a Hindu view of Maya, mm-hmm. and the world's unreal. Mm-hmm. And yet, no, here's something burning, but not burned up.
Right, that's us, man. That's
well,
us.
No, there's something beyond us, mm-hmm. and he's arrested. He sees it, and then he seeks for the explanation, and immediately he encounters the Lord. And that's why, Dennis, the Jews themselves are the ultimate, because of your survival. Mm-hmm. Despite persecution, you shouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some shouldn't.
You know what I'm saying.
Just forgive me. I shouldn't have allowed that out. Yeah.
Now you're in trouble.
I'm thinking of Trotsky and the like. There's some
Well, to jump
unimpressive Jews.
To jump from the Hebraic to the.
And he said, "Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place where."
By the way, the only redundancy in God's entire dialogue in the Bible
is.
Take your shoes off your feet.
And so
just
why?
a cute, meaningless point, but I've always gotten a kick out of it. Where else are your shoes if not on your feet?
From off thy feet.
Yes.
Like where else?
Right. Just take off your shoes would have sufficed.
Is that in the Hebrew?
Yes. Yes. It struck me as a kid. Where else are his shoes? I don't.
Well, it also means I think that.
So. I have always asked the question why to any phenomenon since I drove my parents crazy. So everybody knows Jews complain more than other groups, certainly more than Christians. So that's a given. I even have a test. Get a Christian, get a Protestant, Catholic church, and a Jewish synagogue grouped together for lunch, an ecumenical lunch, and I arrange in advance to serve overripe cantaloupe. Which group will complain the most? Everyone knows the answer. The Jews will complain the most. Okay, so that's not a riddle. The riddle is why. And I have a fun theory, which I won't bother with, and I have a serious theory. And the serious theory is Jews look at suffering with the following statement: it stinks. And Christians look at suffering as being Christ-like. And that's the difference in views of suffering, which is fine. I love the fact that we don't agree on everything because we enrich each other. But I really do believe that the view of suffering is different. The word redemption, as was just used, that God will redeem this suffering is not a concept I am theologically or emotionally comfortable with.
So first of all, will bookmark the overripe cantaloupe because I wouldn't stand for that. So that's proof of your argument here, because I don't know what's wrong with you. Yeah, I mean, that kind of experiment is just unconscionable. So first, I want to just have that stated clearly. This is so interesting to me with the bringing in of Aaron, because like for me as a storyteller, it's like, right, you elevate the storyteller, right? It's the messenger, but then Aaron, the minute he has a chance to do anything, like, is running off making golden calves. And it's like, so it goes back to what you're saying, that Moses...
He's not the direct recipient of the divine revelation either. He's the second order.
He's the second order.
But Moses doesn't work without him, and he's completely adrift without Moses. So it's very funny.
Yeah, well, that is exactly the structure,
you wonder,
by the
too,
way.
if that's not a representation of the relationship in some sense between the genuine prophet and the politician. Because the politician is necessary and has to play this game where victory is everything and is going to be swayed in some sense by pragmatic and ideological concerns. And that's actually necessary in order to bring the prophetic into the realm of policy, right? You can't do without that. You can't just be above politics.
Yeah, you can have John the Baptist like screaming out in the desert. That doesn't make laws. Like, it's not good for laws.
Right.
Coriolanus.
So, and
By the
God,
way, forgive me one thing.
please.
It's a very sad fact, it seems to me. We're stuck in human life. We want leaders who don't want to be leaders.
That's true. That is so true.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? That we'd rather have people
The people who want to be leaders, 90%, not all, 90% want to be leaders because they want to be leaders.
Yeah.
Not because they want to do immense good and have no alternative in
So
their
that's
life
the
to do so.
narcissistic and the prideful.
Yes.
So we want someone like Moses.
Yeah, but the guy who's like that doesn't become a leader.
Right. No, it's really...
If God appeared to me in a burning bush, I'd run for president.
That's
But in the meantime, I have no interest in doing so.
right.
Well, it's also I think that part of that, it's like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle too, because as people start, that's what I've come to realize absolute power corrupts absolutely means. I used to think it was like you get to a certain point and you just get headstrong and you have all the power in the world. But as you start to engage in the act of leadership, there's so many temptations that come in.
Exactly.
It's even if you're somebody who started out with good intentions, the will to resist that.
Right, that's the acting point. You're entirely right.
And you got to ask yourself too, what do you need to fortify yourself against those temptations? Right. When you're exposing, yes, and friends who will tell you the truth, and you need to be embedded in these hierarchical structures. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
I once had I do a lot of throwaway lines. I love the absurd. It keeps me sane. Out of nowhere on my radio show, I once said, folks, wife in Sanskrit means she who finds flaws in her husband. I totally forgot I ever said that. It was one of my crackpot throwaway lines, and I moved on with the show. You have no idea how many people I have met at speeches. Dennis, that Sanskrit definition of wife, God, is that true?
Well, Ben Shapiro told me that the Hebrew word from which helpmeet is translated in the King James Version.
Yeah.
So
Ezer.
It means beneficial adversary, that's a more accurate translation.
The one that means equal. Yes, equal, that's right. It means his equal. It's never translated correctly.
Right,
The Hebrew is a helpmate who is equal to him.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so does it have that beneficial adversary flavor?
Yes, because neged also means against.
Yeah. Right. And so there's a biological principle.
So the Sanskrit was right.
That's right. It's called opponent processing. And if you want to make it's partly why we have two hemispheres and not one. If you want to make a very finely gradated discrimination, judgment, you need two opposing forces. And so, for example, imagine you want to just do something as simple as move your hand smoothly this way. Okay, you can do that, and it's pretty smooth. But this is way smoother. And you do that by pushing against, and then you can calibrate unbelievably precisely. And so if you have this adversarial relationship, then you can calibrate much more precisely.
Incidentally, how we've discussed, that's also true conservatism and true liberalism. as a force to negotiate complex change in a manner that's smooth.
Right.
Corrupted, it's a mess.
Yeah, well, the conservatives stand for what is, and the liberals in some stand for what could be.
It's the brakes and the gas.
And then you have the logos that mediates between those two. Yeah, that's the necessity for free speech. Okay, so
You said something to the effect that how people behave or is their greatest argument for God or something. Do you recall just saying that? I know you said something analogous, but it just triggered something that I feel also very keenly. The greatest argument for atheism is never given by atheists. It's given by bad religious people. Good religious people are the best argument for God's existence, and bad religious people are the best
Dennis,
argument for atheism.
All the people who comment on my biblical lectures who are atheists who've come to appreciate Genesis, they almost all say the same thing. They said, I was so brutalized by bad religious people when I was a kid that it turned me against not only God, but religion.
I have a prayer. May all bad religious people either become good or atheist.
Yeah. So we don't know. We don't know how much damage.
The third wish.
That's good.
After that.
There you go. All right. Hey, well, look, I'm batting 2 for 2, as we say in America, to those of you
All right,
I don't know.
We've got through.
There's a lovely story of Coleridge, if I may just interject, of where he used to go on holiday on the south coast of England, and sometimes there were cargo from vessels that were shipwrecked. And the locals would look out for these shipwrecks because, of course, of the valuable things they would discover. And apparently, Coleridge was observing this one morning on his morning constitutional, and was recorded saying, "The Providential shipwreck. Maybe I'm a providential shipwreck." And I think that's, of course, a deep, I mean, from the poet of the Ancient Mariner, but that's a deeply...
It's not such a bad way to conceptualize yourself. And I think when you love someone, you sort of conceptualize themselves that way too, because this is especially true within families, because you're sort of thrown into your family, and so you're sort of with people who are on average like other people, and they have their idiosyncrasies and their weaknesses, but the fact that you love them means that you do regard them as providential shipwrecks. You could replace them with something perfect, but then they wouldn't be the person that you love.
I'm just mesmerized. I am sorry. I stopped at providential shipwreck. And I was thinking, when I called my wife tonight, honey, you are my providential shipwreck.
Yeah.
Let us know how it goes.
I will let you know how it goes. And as well as I know her, I'm not sure how she will react.
I'm
just
sensing
for the
a
record.
new line of Douglas Hallmark cards.
Well, Providence may have a shipwreck in your future.
That is so to be completely unhelpful, the Torah has an incredible task, and so does all biblical literature, but the Torah is the oldest. It had to be important and meaningful to people in the late Bronze Age and to us. And that it succeeds is not argument 56 for me that it's a divine text. But they undoubtedly understood this story better than we do.
But Dennis, would you also say that it's part of Scripture and divine revelation that it's both accessible, easy for an ordinary person to understand?
That's good.
And yet hard enough.
That's right.
For philosophers.
That's why we're sitting around.
That's
right.
it's a Jacob's
He's the
ladder.
regular Joe. I like that. That cracked me up. Yes.
Well, and as the regular Joe, I just want to point out.
Wait, forgive me. I got a call from a guy in San Francisco. This is the joy of doing a radio show, who was the head of No Circ, which, needless to say, would be in San Francisco. Not only anti-circumcision, but was working to have his foreskin restored. And I will never forget. I was a little, it's very hard to stun me after all these years of radio. And I said, I'm sorry, did I get that right? You are working to restore your foreskin? And then I don't normally insult callers. I just said, you must be very bored. And that was the end of that
I love that it's called
conversation.
No Cirque, and he called into your show's like Cirque du Soleil. It's like a celebration. You need some branding help. I have a very quick question. Does anyone know, and I imagine this is a Dennis question, why are some of the verbs italicized and the nouns, I mean, just specific words are italicized in the text and others aren't, and it seems somewhat arbitrary. Does anyone have an explanation for that?
Show me. That would be in the King James, right? Yeah, I'm using. So, give me an example of an italicized.
Pharaoh's heart is hardened. The is italicized.
Yeah. That's very. There
he
must
says,
be a
take
reason
thy rod
that
and
they
cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a servant.
I know a
answer
little bit
because-
about 17th century
Go ahead.
italicization. It really has no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, that's
That's the best answer possible.
I don't know.
It looks like an overwrought screenplay, like if you're an amateur screenwriter and they put everything in caps, like to make the action verbs more action-y.
Or a YouTube commenter.
Yeah.
You can tell this is important because it's in caps and it's bold, plus their exclamation
And exclamation points,
Yeah.
right? Exactly.
The emojis are also puzzling, but we can deal with that.
There's also well, I think partly what's going on here is that Pharaoh is himself being tested about whether he will true himself to the principle of all reality, to God. And the answer, of course, turns out to be no, he won't. And a lot of what's going on in these chapters is the demonstration of the sovereignty of the principle against the resistance of Pharaoh. And so, I mean, the story could have gone differently. I mean, that is to say, Pharaoh could have said, hey, you know what? I totally get this whole thing that you're revealing to me. I get it. I've been out of line. You know what? Go ahead. That would have been a different story, of course. That's not the story we have.
Leave it to Blackwood to be a Pharaoh ally.
I'm not a Pharaoh ally. I'm saying the story is such that.
I also love how we've attributed "do not lie" to Jordan. That's great. That's my highlight.
It's Jordan's explication of the
I've
commandment.
just made it popular.
Did you not make
again.
that up? Did you come up with that?
Bring back not lying.
Are you saying that's in here somewhere?
It's a terrible thing to have to bring back. It's like, remember this rule? But
I just want to know. I'm very curious. You said, I didn't obviously want to interrupt. So you said that children normally share food, Jordan. So my non-scientific experience has been that when I've been to birthday parties of little kids, you see kids with 8 cupcakes, barely able to hold them. Share one with little Devin here. No.
yeah, well, it's context dependent because you do see flips of that with children as well. But there are certainly situations in which they'll absolutely feed other people and they'll share food with their parents. And so it's
Okay, fine.
Children flip frames of conception quite quickly, and they can certainly snap into a very selfish mode.
There's also a cupcake exemption.
Oh,
Yeah, there is that too. Yeah, and maybe there's birthday party cupcake
That's right,
exemption.
because I've only seen it with cupcakes.
Yes.
That's
Right,
correct.
yeah, right,
Yes.
right.
Try
All right,
it with celery and see what happens.
By the way, since you have forced me to say what I just said earlier about the lack of conception in the Torah of these words, equality and freedom, and this will blow my Christian friends' minds. I don't think love as a noun appears in the Torah. Love as a verb, definitely. The Torah cares how you be. It's really not an abstract instrument. This
So is that
how you
associated with
behave.
doing? Yeah.
Doing.
Right.
And I have totally, as a Jew and as a human, internalized that. My whole thesis on happiness, which is a huge part of my thinking and my writing, is you should act happy even if you do not feel it, because you owe it to others to have a happy disposition. So I have taken, I realize subconsciously.
So are you actually happy to be here?
I am acting happy today.
Well, you're convincing us. So that'll do.
That matters.
That'll do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But I really imbibed this in my life. I am such a behaviorist, and I know I got it from the Torah and Judaism. So, I'm sorry, but my all-time favorite anecdote, 4th grade in yeshiva. I remember very little from 4th grade. The rabbi announces okay, boys, because it was only incumbent upon the boys. This is an Orthodox Jewish school. He goes, it's time to daven mincha, meaning it's time for the afternoon prayer. And being who I always was, very respectfully, but with chutzpah, I walked over and I go, Rabbi Fostag, I'm not in the mood to daven mincha. The guy was from Eastern Europe. He spoke English, but he had clearly never, it was obvious to me, heard mood and pray in the same sentence. And the guy thinks, he looks up, he strokes his beard, and he goes, Shmuel Prager, that's my Hebrew name, Shmuel Prager is not in the mood to daven mincha. So what? The man changed my life. I mean it utterly sincerely. I have said to myself, when I have not been in the mood to do the right thing all of my life, so what?
Right. Why is it about
and
you?
that is so Torah-like. It's you don't feel it? Big deal. It's why the Torah is not conceptual. Act it, have a great day.